Mike Adams is a conspiracy-mongering anti-science quack who runs the website Natural News, which is a site dedicated to convincing people to stop taking their effective medicine and start paying way too much money for sugar pills and unproven and often untested herbs. Adams hit a new low last week when he wrote a very long post comparing the company Monsanto to Nazis and anyone who promotes genetically modified crops to Nazi collaborators. He then went on to talk about how Nazis and Nazi collaborators were hunted down and often killed, and then he talks about how the entire country of Germany celebrated the people who hunted down Nazis. He even paraphrases the German government, saying, "It is the moral right and even the obligation of human beings everywhere to actively plan and carry out the killing of those engaged in heinous crimes against humanity." He calls that a fundamental philosophical truth. And then he immediately points out once again that publishers and journalists and scientists who talk about GMOs in an open and scientific way are basically Nazis and Nazi collaborators. He then called upon his audience to start making a list of any Monsanto collaborators so that they can be kept track of. Almost immediately, a website magically appeared called MonsantoCollaborators.org, and it came complete with a swastika and a list of quote-unquote Monsanto collaborators, including my podcasting co-host Stephen Novella, his colleague at Science-Based Medicine, David Gorski, as well as Joanne Wendell, who writes for Forbes.com and once said that GMOs are safe to eat and environmentally sustainable. The horror. The horror. When Adams was, of course, immediately criticized for this horrendous post, he claimed that no, he didn't actually mean for anybody to hunt down and murder any of these quote-unquote Monsanto collaborators in the same way that someone would want to do to, say, Nazi collaborators. And also he claimed that he had nothing to do with the Monsanto collaborators website. In fact, he thought that it was possibly all a false flag operation put on by the GMO activists just to make anti-GMO activists look bad. And he suggested that nobody on his team should link to or endorse the website. Of course, that suggestion carries less weight considering that it appeared just beneath his update where he links directly to the Monsanto Collaborators website and praises it for its coverage on one particular journalist. Meanwhile, Monsanto collaborators, like the folks over at the Genetic Literacy Project, dug around and found that, much to everyone's surprise, Adams was most likely actually behind the Monsanto Collaborators website, considering that it was registered before his post even went up, and it contained basically his fingerprints all over it. Adams' violent rhetoric almost exactly mirrors the rhetoric of other extremist groups like the anti-abortion movement. They directly compared abortion providers to Nazis and encouraged as many people as possible to take up that way of thinking, that there was a great Holocaust going on and that the only way to stop it would be by murdering the people involved. And that has led directly to the deaths of multiple medical professionals, like George Tiller, for instance, the abortion provider in Kansas. So how long before Adams' violent rhetoric pays off in the same way it paid off for anti-abortion activists? It's hard to say. The FBI is apparently investigating him right now, but of course there's only so much they can do. His post already went out to his thousands of fans, and there's a very good chance that even if he stops saying these things, some other extremist will take up the call. So in the meanwhile, the best we can do is condemn that kind of rhetoric and remind our friends and family that GMOs, according to all of the scientific evidence we have thus far, appear to be safe and environmentally sustainable. And I say that as someone who is a frequent critic of companies like Monsanto. I think that they have many corporate practices that are dreadful, that deserve our scrutiny and sometimes our condemnation. But that doesn't mean that I enjoy seeing rumors and often debunked stories passed around as truth, like the idea that Indian farmers had an increase in suicides following the introduction of GMO crops. It's simply not true. It's been debunked. Stop spreading that around. So regardless of how you feel about Monsanto, and even if you are skeptical of the science surrounding GMOs, I hope that we can all agree that this kind of violent rhetoric has no place in the discussion. And let's hope that Mike Adams wisens up before it's too late.